Let's just make sure,
My display here says your microphone is not working.
We'd have this figured out by now, Scott. Every time it's something. It's the nature of the beast.
yep.
Can you guys hear me?
Yes.
Are we good to go? Someone give us the nod.
Yeah, we are.
Okay.
We're good?
All right, Al.
Okay.
That's your cue.
All right. Good morning, all. It's Wednesday, September 1, 2021, and this is a regular meeting of the Advisory Parking Committee. Laura, could you please take the roll?
Al Weiches,
Here.
Richard Ostrin,
Here.
Aaron Black, Stephen Kozlowski,
Here.
Lisa Kruger, Sasha Nassirian, Judith Passwood, Lisa Silverman,
Here.
Mary Claire Kakoff,
Here.
Jennifer Yurk.
Here.
Okay.
All right. Thank you. Next on the agenda is introductions. We have a new APC member.
Yes, we
All
do
right,
have
Scott?
a new APC number that is the Shashir Nassirian. He did message me and was not going to be able to make today's meeting. He is out of town for work. He did say he was going to try to log in at some point, at least to listen and hear the discussion. And so all the board is aware that you can log in like that if you're not available. However, you cannot vote unless you're here in person, unless it's a military overseas or a medical condition that's keeping you from being at the board. So he would be able to log in to listen, but he would not be able to vote. The other thing I wanted to bring up with the addition of Nassirian to the board, it puts us at 8 members on the board. We still have 1 vacancy, which is the restaurant owner position. So with that being said, we have 2 alternates, the 2 that are here. So if we do happen to have all 8 people here in attendance, we can only have 1 alternate sitting as a voting member. We can never have more than 9, which is on the board. So just something to keep in mind as we go forward now that we filled at least one of the vacancies. So
More
What?
than 7.
What does Nassirian represent? What group?
he is,
Resident.
President.
yeah, resident.
Oh, okay, he's my partner.
He took Ann's spot, right?
I'm sorry?
He took Ann's spot?
Correct, you took Ann's spot.
And is there a spot that's reserved for restaurants?
There is one for restaurant owner, yep.
Have we ever had a restaurant owner?
We did
That
at one
has
point.
been
in time.
vacant as long as I've been with the board here, so.
I don't remember who it would.
It was, on the corner here, Susan,
Peabody. Yeah, right,
yeah.
yeah, sorry. A long time, yeah. Okay.
yeah, she was there for a long time, but then she sold the restaurant.
That's all I have for introductions.
Okay, any review of the agenda?
No changes?
No changes. So then we have the minutes of August 4th, 2021. Are there any changes, additions, corrections, modifications anybody would like to present?
I'll make a motion to approve.
We have a motion from Richard to approve. Do we have a second?
I'll second the motion.
Second from Jennifer. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Yeah,
Any opposed? No opposition. The motion passes. The agenda
Sorry,
as
any
presented.
abstentions?
Pardon me?
Any abstentions?
Oh, any abstentions?
There were
No.
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 Perfect, thank you.
No. Thank you for asking. So the minutes are approved as presented in the packet. So now, topic at hand, outdoor dining. So, Scott, enlighten us about outdoor dining.
Well, at the last meeting, there was a couple outdoor dining platforms that were on the agenda. that
Yes,
they
there were.
looking for some APC input from. And during that discussion, there was questions as far as what is the standards, what are the policies? And we got Nick from planning here who's gonna go over what the standards are.
No, but I'd like to hear that.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Great, yeah, I'm here just to try to keep my word. You did have a lot of questions last month about, outdoor dining in general as it currently stands, which I
I'm
provided to you
so
in
sorry to
this.
interrupt, I just realized we are not recording. Could someone start the recording?
Recording in progress.
Perfect. Nick, you are all set, thank you.
Thank you, Laura. So this first section here I gave to you in that little cover memo was just a general outline of the outdoor dining standards as they exist today. They're pretty standard. If anyone has any questions about those, feel free to ask me as we progress here. But I also wanted to get you involved in this overall outdoor dining study that we're doing at the planning board. I provided to you the only two memos that have gone to the planning board so far. We've done 2 study sessions, the third to come next week. So this is actually quite a perfect stop because I'd like to get some input from you all, from your perspectives about what you're thinking about in terms of outdoor dining. And hopefully you saw within the first memo, study session number 1, there was a bulleted list of things, overarching topics that the planning board really wants to dive into. Some of the big ones I can see you all being concerned with: review the placements of decks, and enclosures, but decks predominantly. Off-season outdoor dining, as in year-round outdoor dining, that seems like something you'd be interested in. Which other ones? Let's see. That may be it from your perspectives as the APC, of course, as business owners and members of the public. If there's anything else, let me know. But I think that's really all the summary I need to give you. I suppose it's very high level up at the planning board right now. If you read, we're really just kind of researching, formalizing, and we plan to start writing some ordinances for next week.
Oh.
And as I mentioned last time, we're happy to keep you in the loop in regards to those changes. But with that, any questions?
Yes, Richard.
So the one question I have that keeps coming up in the ordinance, it's 4 seats for every 12 linear and only 1 per building, 1 platform then? I don't know if you could specify. So I'm trying to see how we got examples of you can go the entire frontage of your storefront.
So may I ask, where are you seeing that? In the outdoor dining standards?
Yes, it's in the,
Oh, I see. This last numeral number 8 here.
yes.
So I'll just read it for you all, if you don't have it up. It says, outdoor dining is permitted in a B1 district at a rate of 4 seats for every 12 linear feet of store frontage, with no more than 12 seats total per building. No elevated enclosed platforms on the street are permitted in a B1 district. So that's just that. It's only in the B1 district, which we have maybe 2 small areas that I can recall off the top of my head.
Where is the B1 district? I'm not.
So there's one up, there's a little corner up on North Eaton where the Jets Pizza, Cano, and that other little strip where the dry cleaners is. That's a B1.
Okay.
And also over on Maple with the Holiday Market Select, that little strip. Those may be the only 2, but those are the 2 that I can think of off the top of my head. Other than that, the rest of the zoning districts, the B2, B2B, B2C, etc., are all covered by the first 7. So that .8, Mr. Astrian,
It's strictly for B1.
strictly for B1, yeah.
So there's no language in there that says there's a limit of how many platforms per street, or, I mean, I have a concern about that. If you look at Pierce Street, that we have the possibility of over 50% of the available parking on Pierce Street dedicated to platforms. So I'm just wondering if there's a saturation point, or there's no language for that, or?
Yeah, and that was an interesting point you brought up last week, because I felt as though maybe a little deja vu that I had heard that before. So I spent a lot of time looking around, and I did not see that. So I've written it down here.
Okay, and
Something to at least consider.
and goes to the same point. Where in the language does it say you can go the entire length of your store frontage?
Yeah, so I guess it doesn't necessarily say that. What it says alternatively is,
It's on page 20, where the planning board recommended an approval to the city commissioners.
oh, you're thinking for the Maury, sir, probably,
Yeah.
right? We're talking really general. right
General
now,
questions.
just like
I mean, isn't
any
it the
restaurant.
same thing in general?
So in general, you have somewhat of a point here in that the planning board could control that if they so choose, but really all the ordinance says is that you can't go in front of neighboring properties.
Without permission.
Right, and there are some other conditions that neighboring property has to be vacant. That only happened once that I've ever been aware of at the Mad Hatter. So it doesn't say you can go the length of the storefront, but of course, usually people max that out.
Okay, and then, just on top of that, if you have available seating on the sidewalk, is there a limit between the sidewalk and the platform? How many seats? I mean, what the actual intent of the bistro was to have how many seats?
65.
65. So in some instances, you could exceed that from your outside dining area between that and the sidewalk.
Generally, no. Generally, we do, for bistros specifically, we do monitor that quite closely.
Okay.
I'm thinking for, I mean, I guess Ely's is a bad example because it's so small, but they generally have sidewalk and platform tables. They're well under 65. Let's see, Toast?
Yes.
Toast. I guess I'll admit I haven't counted this year yet, but in general, their site plan should say under 65. So all the other ones, though, including the more that we'll be looking at, so non-bistros, don't have a cap.
So I have so for this, obviously, we're still at 30,000 feet on this topic, in the planning board's responsibility. For this particular committee, what is our focus? Is our focus the taking away of parking spaces? What else would our focus be at this point?
The focus for this committee has to be regarding parking, right? So we're the advisory parking committee, so it would be how these outdoor dining decks affect parking and the demand on parking or the availability of parking.
So if that's the case, obviously if we had this conversation before COVID, there'd be a lot more stringent discussions on the removal of losing parking spaces. So are we having that now?
Here's my question. I was reading somewhere, I forget, but does it go this way if, when a restaurant requests a permission for a dining platform, is there a public hearing held? And that public hearing, there's a radius and everybody gets notice, and that hearing held before the planning board?
Yeah, so in general, you're somewhat correct. So not all dining platforms do. For example, Planthropy did not, depends on what you mean by public hearing, I suppose.
Mm-hmm.
They did go to the planning board for a public meeting, but when I hear public hearing, I think special land use permits or liquor licenses. Those both go to the planning board, and then they go to the city commission to set the public hearing for noticing purposes, and then there's a public hearing at the city commission.
Well, we have public hearings here too.
Yeah, I guess our verbiage, like when I hear public hearing, I think something different. But if you consider this a public hearing, then yes.
No, I mean, we've sent out notices
Oh,
on certain
gotcha.
topics, and we have the public come in and they comment, and then we vote. And we're an advisory committee, so our vote is just what we
A
think.
recommendation.
A recommendation going to the city commission. But my point is that when somebody invests, a lot of money in terms of, architects, lawyers, drawings, meetings in front of the planning board, and that all gets done, and then it comes to us to say, well, is there enough parking space, for this dining platform after all that has been done? So if we say no, I mean, these people have spent a lot of money, trying to get a dining platform. Perhaps it may make more sense for us to evaluate, for the parking committee to evaluate the area and the loss of parking on the street and the saturation point, as Richard points out, and the density of the parking structure, parking decks, dining decks, I'm sorry, before the whole process starts. So, I mean, we could say, yeah, we don't advise a dining deck, on this street in this spot, because we feel that it would take away from parking that would benefit all the other businesses on the street, because essentially what we're doing is we're taking away parking from every other business besides the restaurant. So maybe it should come to the parking committee first to evaluate whether the spot is feasible for a dining deck before the whole process starts. And even if we say, well, we don't think so, I mean, the process can start and go to the city commission, they can override us. But
Sure.
perhaps we should give our input first as to whether, it's an actual great location for a dining deck, or maybe, there's too many of them around in that spot, and you have to wait till somebody gives one up so you can get your spot.
Okay.
So I think that's my biggest beef, is that, everything gets done and then it comes to us, and then, if we say no, then it's all gone,
Yeah.
I have another comment as well. Taking it back up to 30,000 feet, I mean, we're here to support what the residents and the public want. But at that 30,000 feet, 2 years ago, the public wanted lots of parking. So that's why there's a lot of focus on the parking aspect of it. But the public also wants outdoor dining. They want it in the summer, and even though I may not want to eat outside in the winter, people want to eat outside because of the concerns of COVID. So what comes first, the chicken or the egg? Is parking the most important, or is outdoor dining most important? Because that obviously will affect some of our decisions as well.
Yeah, and I have a couple of responses to.
Let me just add one more.
That's fine. That's fine.
I think it would be fair for some sort of proceeding to happen so that the adjacent businesses can have input as to whether they favor a dining deck in their vicinity or not. So that's my point. I think there should be input from adjacent businesses.
Okay.
Before the whole process starts.
Yep. That's a good point.
Yeah.
It's like
I mean, we could have a public hearing here, so-and-so wants a dining deck, fill the room with or when we can fill the room with people that want to come and show up and make comments, and then we could say this is what we think.
And just a point, you know, I always under the impression that a dining deck was associated with a bistro license. So when we got into the, you know, adding on Beyond Juice, let's say there's several coffee shops, could all go, I mean, so at what point, you know, do we have control over how many decks really go out there?
And I would say that's what we're studying now. If you have some ideas, if you think like your decks per block
Yeah.
figures could actually be useful, those are the things we're looking to study.
Yeah.
And I want to address your point, sir, about the process. Because I actually tend to agree with you because, let's take the Morey, for example. They're doing a special land use permit amendment. Not a cheap process, both with the architect fees.
Right.
The city fees alone are $2,800. And realistically, like you said, it could come here and you could say, well, no thanks. And then the city commission could say, well, APC said no thanks, we agree. And they could have known that right on the onset. If there's any solace in this, we do advise our applicants that they do have to come here and that it's not just a checkbox. So they know that they have to get this part done, and it's almost just as important as the planning board reviews. But I would say your point still stands. And then I want to say too, in regards to what we're doing here, that first comment you made, it's platforms. A lot of it is platforms because they go directly in a parking space. But I wanted to point out at least one other thing, in that in the required off-street parking ordinance, for an eating establishment with indoor or combined indoor-outdoor consumption, it's a standard one space per each 75 square feet of floor area, et cetera, excluding all area utilized for outdoor dining. So what that means is pretty much just your building. So all these really large outdoor dining platforms or patios are not considered in parking calculations. Now downtown that may not matter because we've got the overlay parking district. But in other areas, say like a Bistro Joe's is outside of the parking assessment district. The French Lady up on Northhold Woodward is out. No, they're in it. Excuse me. The Forest Grill is outside. So that might be something else to look into as well. Just another thing that relates to this board specifically.
Another point I'd like to make, I don't know if it's contiguous with what we're talking about, but would it be reasonable to ask that the dining deck permits be reviewed on an annual or semi-annual basis, you know, based on, you know, how much interference they're producing or how much, you know, the adjacent businesses are being impacted by them in terms of, you know, loss of parking.
And you're saying by this review body or just in general?
Well, in general.
So in general, they do. It's an annual license for all outdoor dining, which
Right.
encompasses the decks.
So who reviews that?
Each city department. So my department would get the license sent around to us, Scott's department, the fire department, building department, and we all have a chance to look at the application, see if things have changed. From what I understand, we do, if things have changed, I always use an easy example. Let's say there's a deck gets put up and it causes 5 accidents in the month of May or something like that. Realistically, the police department could say, well, we no longer feel that this deck is appropriate and not sign off. Does that sound right?
That's correct.
Not that that's ever happened, but we do have that little check. So my answer is yes. Yeah.
Yeah. Could it come before this committee also?
That I don't know. I guess right now we don't do that, but I'm not sure for a city clerk, you know, almost a procedural license renewal.
For initial license, the initial license application, it goes through all the process that Nick's talking about. The renewals is the one that is done by city staff, so it's already been previously approved by the planning board or by the city commission. and this is just an annual renewal, because it has to be renewed every year, so
But what
under
we
that
could-
circumstance, it doesn't come back
Okay.
to the boards.
But what we could do, if we do a similar thing with the planning board with our administrative approval applications, is we do produce reports and bring it to that board for what we reviewed and what it was for. So maybe just a simple spreadsheet saying, hey, these restaurants renewed, they've got this, this, and this, and we approved it. Just so you can kind of
Yeah,
keep
that would be
tabs
great
on
for us to
things.
have.
Yeah, I mean, it's interesting because we had a debate over the, electric charging stations. And there, even from this committee, we didn't want to take up one parking spot to
Right.
put an EV outside.
Right.
And we've got, I don't know, if we've done an inventory, how many, platforms. I mean, it's pretty ironic that, there was an uproar about putting a spot for charging, and here we are, putting,
Yeah, each platform takes 2 to 3 spots.
right.
Yeah.
And then there was another question about, and it's on 7F. No such facility shall erect or install permanent fixtures in the public right-of-way. So my question is, and I'm not picking on them, but just as an example of social, that's up all year round. So, it'd be nice as if I was a business, I've got 1,000 square feet of extra building, at what cost, and again, it says, shall not be year-round, so.
Yeah, and to further your point, there's HVAC in there, sprinkler. So
Wow.
I think my guess is, because that was one of the first ones to come out, is that this ordinance wasn't as specific when they came out. So we wrote this almost in reaction to that type of thing. There's another one up on Northhold Woodward, I think you can probably guess.
Yes, I know exactly.
Those two were the ones that kind of forced a bit of a rewrite of this ordinance. That's where we got rid of the isinglass for bistros, that like thick plasticky film. So that's not permitted. That was because of those two. So I'll have to check into that. I'll have to see.
Okay.
Because they would be required to do an outdoor dining permit still. It's still public property. And also do an extended outdoor dining permit because they do use it.
And who assesses what they pay for that?
I believe it's the clerks.
The clerk's
I think it's
office.
a standard fee.
Interesting. Would just be interesting.
But the question would be who sets that fee, right?
Yeah.
But
Just
again,
the commission, I presume.
to your point, including that extension, you're supposed to bring all your outdoor dining furnishings and fixtures
Every night.
inside every night.
Right.
So it would be impossible to bring that whole structure
Okay.
in
Right.
every night. So
Okay. So again, we haven't given any guidelines to, if it's a coffee shop, again, I was always under the impression that it was the intention of an outdoor dining deck was associated with a bistro. So where we got into, the slippery slope of, coffee shops and the plantropia, so. And there was also part of the ordinance that in order to obtain a bistro license, the hours of operation, you were, for the evening hours for dinner, you have toast again that is not open for dinner. So, I mean, these are all, exceptions, so I don't know who's enforcing all the,
yeah, and luckily I can say Toast has been issued a notice of violation and they will be coming.
okay, interesting.
So
They will be what, adding dinner?
they've asked, well, they will be applying for a special land use permit to request different hours. Now, they've done this before and it was denied, so we'll see.
Okay,
You
And-
mean they want to be allowed to work fewer hours?
I think essentially just not be open. I think part of their original special land use permit was that they stay open, and I believe this is going to be closed till at least 8 p.m. on Fridays and 9 p.m. on Saturdays.
Okay.
So that goes to your point that you made at last month's meeting about the point of these decks was to keep streets active,
yes,
and if they close at 3, it's dead space.
right.
So
See, it's a privilege and an honor, in my opinion, to have a deck.
Absolutely.
And that there's, responsibilities and obligations that come along with it. I mean, as I say, I'd love to have a parking spot in front of my store for someone to pull up and, just, receive the merchandise or whatever,
Yeah.
Well, that was what, I mean, this is off topic, but that was on my list for this committee, which is, why aren't we doing more of that? 15
why
minute
are we?
space. Why aren't we?
Yeah.
That's especially in the action.
Yeah,
Get people in the decks for long term, but have more short term. Anyway,
So I've written down, just to clarify.
Okay.
I think it might be a good idea to have different rules for different uses. And by uses, I mean
absolutely.
a coffee shop versus a bistro versus a full.
Right, I mean, again, you know, you're specifically targeting the restaurants for extra privileges, and that's exactly how I look at it. I mean, the intention was, you know, the activity and the vibrance, which I'm not against, but I mean, we've really tilted the pendulum here. I mean, it's like we've gone above and beyond, in my opinion. And again, it's just, if I looked on Maple, which is a very narrow road, and I happen to get another, you know, coffee shop or another restaurant, and, you know, you take up a deck, and then on top of that, if they take up a deck, you know, are you able to, do you have to take the spot before and after? So, you know, one parking spot or two parking spot turns into, and that's what I couldn't understand with the Maury when you're coming up to it. It looks like they've got 5 spots. So, you know. Right. I'm just trying to say we really need to have guidelines and specifics.
Exactly. That's my,
Yeah,
that's my biggest point, too.
Right. We fight for every parking spot available.
Right.
And it's just, it's
Well,
like.
that's the focus of this committee,
Right.
is to create and maintain sufficient parking to bring people into the city.
Yes.
If it's all dining decks and there's no parking, that's
That's right.
great. I mean, people will find a spot to park to go dining, but they won't find a spot to park to
That's exactly.
go to any other retail store.
And it goes back to my point, and I didn't know how to get the specifics on the value of what a park, you know, and I don't know how we can do that. I know we did it like 30 years ago.
Right.
Each parking meter generated so much in revenue to the stores. So, I mean, every time you give up, you know, a parking spot, and again, you're giving up a parking spot only for face value, and actually less, because you're only charging, I believe, 80% of the total time period. So again, that means when a customer of mine wants to come into town and they don't want to go into a deck and they want to drive around, look for an on-street parking spot, they come in, they do their, you know, business, and they leave within the hours allotted time. But that spot could generate thousands of dollars in 1 hour. So, you know, the fairness there. And I also have a concern, these things go way far into the season. You know, November 15th, you know, if there was no COVID, you know, by the time you're in the middle of October, in my opinion, you know, you've milked whatever benefit you're going to have for outdoor dining. You know, if we didn't have COVID, I can't imagine someone wanting to sit outside in, you know, 30-degree, 40-degree weather, you know.
But that's what we're talking about on the upper levels. We're talking about all year dining.
Right.
well, I
We don't
think that's
necessarily mean platforms. That's,
Right. I like
Sorry
some of
to
the
interrupt.
photos of the individual heating units with, you know, no massive coverings and gas storage and, you know, there were definitely some extremes
Oh,
during
yeah.
COVID.
Yeah, even the podium, you know, they have their podiums outside. I mean, there's another ordinance. You have to have 5 feet of clearance between the, so if you have,
clear path, yep.
you know, the tables on the sidewalk, and then you have the deck, and you have, you know, the decorative and things like that, you know, and you're coming by with,
Theaters, yeah.
exactly, you're coming by with some kids in a carriage. There's difficulties.
Yeah.
I think there has been a trend, though, internationally, even before COVID, where not only is there more outdoor dining, but even year-round. So I don't think it's just here or just COVID.
It just depends on what you do, because you saw the greenhouses and igloos around town.
Yes.
Generally, people are pretty comfortable sitting in those in the winter. But that's something, do we want to allow those?
That's a whole nother-
And that's a whole separate
That's a whole
conversation,
nother-
right? I mean,
It's a whole separate conversation.
but in terms of off-season outdoor dining, generally platforms aren't, we don't see them in the winter. I can't think of one. So,
Well, right now you can't.
you're right. It has
You have to
end
bring
on
it in by
15th,
November
so,
4th or something.
So social brings in that whole side?
no.
No.
So there is some.
So they may be, and that's a patio up, not a platform, but
Okay.
that may be legal non-conforming. That's something I have to check into, to
Or
be sure.
not. It's done deal.
And it's interesting, a bistro license is granted, there's There's no fee for a bistro license.
Aside from the special land use permit, no.
So they're granted for free from the city.
And I guess the annual liquor license renewals, but
Right. but-
everybody has to do that.
Okay. Okay. I don't know if I had any other.
And, Mr. Ashton, you said something about platform inventory?
Yes.
I wanted to let you know, I'm gonna be doing that as a part of this study. Just, I'm gonna see if it looks good on a map, but if it doesn't, I'll at least have an inventory.
Okay, and would you be able to assess how many actual parking spaces are taken up?
Sure.
Okay.
That would be a good thing to know.
Sure. Yeah.
You know-
Anything else? Anything else?
No, but I mean, one of the reasons we widened the streets and the sidewalks, you know, so if you had the ability to act, again, it was my impression, if you had enough ability to go out on the sidewalk in front of your store, wouldn't have been a necessity for a deck.
Right.
So again, on top of that, we seem to have multiple sidewalk use and deck use, so,
And is it both appropriate? Or
Yes.
should we do one and then?
right. And a lot of this will come up with the Maury.
Yeah. It's a good segue. Great, I think I have some good notes. Admittedly, a lot of it, we kind of already planned to talk about.
Okay.
But it's nice to have more than one body bring it up, and more than one person bring it up. Kind of reinforces that it's important, so.
Yeah, keep coming back and updating us.
Yeah, I wouldn't mind doing that whatsoever. So, especially when the language starts to get written,
Right.
I think it'd be nice to get as many eyes on that as possible, because it is important.
Yeah, I mean, I just like to hear it so I have a better understanding of it.
Sure.
You know, so when I make my consideration, you know, for my vote, you know, I know what to evaluate it on.
Okay. And I guess I should just ask while I'm here, are you hoping for like monthly updates, or are you just kind of as needed, as determined by me, or?
Well, it depends on how much work you get done in between
Okay.
every month.
We are trying to we're trying to really keep at this
Yeah.
and not let too much time go in between, but.
Well, a monthly update would be very nice. I mean,
As you may know,
It's
the master
helpful.
plan's coming
Yeah,
back.
if you
too,
have the
so-
time and availability,
Okay,
we'd love to have you.
okay. So I would expect that I may be able to come back in October. But once October hits, as I said, the master plan is gonna
Yeah.
takes a lot of time, so there may be a lull. But,
This, yeah,
but
this,
that's fine, yeah.
this whole topic seems highly related to the master plan.
Sure. Great,
Thank you.
of course.
Yeah, thanks a lot.
It was
Good.
Up here, I guess.
So, I guess we can move on.
To the, public comment.
Oh, yes,
Is,
I'm sorry, I'm being lacking in my chairmanship here. Is there any public comment on, from anybody on this topic? Anybody zooming in?
There is, but I don't see any hands raised, so I think we're good.
Okay. So I guess we can move on then.
Okay.
260 Northhold Woodward.
Yeah, you want me to take it away?
It's all you know.
Okay. So I probably don't need to give you the spiel, since we did two other dining decks recently. But, I do want to at least say that this has been the planning board, as you saw. This is the second stop, for a recommendation before it hits the city commission, which will be probably, next month. In general, they've got a, 14-seat kind of sidewalk deck coming out from the front of their restaurant existing. And what they're proposing is this new platform in the right-of-way to, I guess, add more outdoor dining. And you probably saw it in your travels over COVID, that they did have a deck out there.
Yeah.
That was approved as a part of the temporary COVID-19 outdoor dining expansions. The proposal now, if you read through the reports, is much slimmer in terms of north-south to kind of, A, line up with their storefront, but B, give back some of those parking spaces. So let me zoom in some more. Okay, so you can kind of see, they didn't necessarily include the parking spaces underneath, but you can see 1, 2, 3, about 4 parking spaces.
4.
I was a little confused about that in the write-up because at one point I saw 3 and then at one point I saw 5. So I wasn't sure how many they were actually taking.
I think what that was is that their original proposal was to match what they had in COVID, which extended in front of the neighbors. And we mentioned that that is not permitted.
Got it.
By ordinance, so they shrunk it.
Okay.
But it still looks like 4 to me, so that's gonna be something I have to confirm.
If I'm looking around at the drawing here, it looks to be 5 to me.
That's what it looks like to me.
Because of the partial, which car is not
2
partial.
partials that'll be completely unusable.
Yep.
And this is based on existing regulation, so it would have to come down November 4th or whatever?
I agree with that. Yes.
I believe it's the 15th, which is crazy.
Extended it?
Which is really soon.
Used to be in the beginning of November.
I guess I'll have to say too, I guess I'm unclear at this point right now today if platforms are included in those extensions. It doesn't, I don't think it necessarily says that you can't use extensions for platforms. So I'd like to double check that. I'd like to look at the clerk's forms and see if that's even an option.
Sure.
And then, can you just reiterate how many are on the sidewalk, on the right-of-way?
Table's 14 in this area right here. It sticks out from the building about 5.5 feet, maybe 6 feet. But
And
you can see here that there's still a 5.5
5
foot
and a
clear path.
Okay.
And then that big amenity zone. And then the platform.
Do they still have valet as well?
They do not.
The reason I ask that question is that usually they will park their valet in like 4 or 5 parking spots, and
Yeah, the location there last year was the city spot, but Moray does not have their own valet.
And we're trying to, I guess, centralize or compartmentalize valet parking for the city. That's going to be one of our next topics of.
I may have to recluse myself from that one.
Well, I checked it among my group of residents, and they all think it looks great, but that's the usual reaction, so I'm not surprised.
I'm sorry, Lisa, I didn't hear what you said.
I said the residents who I've spoken to, or I put out a little thing, they think it looks great. There have been comments, it's not an area that parking is as stressful as other places, partly just because of fewer small businesses and partly because the parking structure's right there. And that it'll liven up the area.
So, another question. I know that we prefer they be open for the dinner hour, but again, you talk about the vitality of, you know, what the bistros and these platforms are supposed to do. They're not open for lunch, so these things are strictly used for the evening hours.
Right,
So,
right. So during the day,
Fine
they're
point,
just taking
yeah.
up parking
right.
spots.
So if you're going, right, so again, if we can dictate it, I mean, if you're going to have a platform, then you should be open for lunch and dinner.
Right.
And I guess my question was, does food have to be served on the dining deck? You know, the Maury is really an after-hours establishment. Although they serve food, it's really a destination for drinking after hours. It's not, I don't know what their hours are for food service, but, you know, does food have to be served on a dining deck, I guess would be my question.
I would say that that is not a specific rule.
Okay.
I guess the
But
open
if
for
they
lunch
did-
thing was I'm sorry, go ahead.
If they didn't, then they would presumably, it'd be like a bar, which would mean more people per square foot, which would mean loudness, and that seems like
I think 50% of your,
food is good.
it has to be food associated with a liquor license.
Is that MLCC rules?
I think so.
That sounds familiar.
Yeah, that's,
But that might not be specific to that.
we should
Yeah,
find that out, yeah. And again, just with the Maury, so there's no other, so it's the possibility of 5 spots, but the spots on both sides would be still free.
Yeah, and again, to your point, when the planning board discussed it, they mentioned this side could
Yeah.
really be shrunk down.
Yeah.
So that it frees up this space.
Right.
It should
So
be at
that
an
it's only
angle.
4,
Yeah.
and then this space and this space would be
Right.
clear.
Yeah, it's unfortunate the configuration of it with the angled parking,
Yeah.
you know, that the platform couldn't be maybe
It's
angled
awkward. It's
to,
awkward. And there's 36 chairs here, so, this is just my personal opinion, I am not a business owner, but removing this table and shrinking it several feet to free up that parking spot does not seem to be a huge ask to remove 4 seats,
Right.
and that's my opinion, but.
Because they've
agree.
got the on sidewalk too.
Right.
At the top of page 29, it says that it's proposed 5 on-street parking spaces. Platform may only be installed from April 1st through November 15th.
Yep, that is what the ordinance says, yep.
Yep.
Yeah, so.
And that, again, I have opposition with November 15th. I mean, my feeling is November 1st, they should all be removed.
Well, even into October, I mean.
I know, yeah. Listen, you'll see in October, the weather, you know, it gets dark early.
Yeah.
But again, I just don't think that you're being sensitive to our current conditions,
Right.
depending on what happens.
But those current conditions somehow elapse into permanent, you know,
Well, that's what he's.
Right,
This
so
is
we're-
part of
we're,
our
you know,
conversation now.
it's the same thing, you know, we granted free parking in the structures, you know, during the height of, you know, COVID, but, you know, once COVID gets under control, hopefully, you know, we went back to the parking in the structures, so, you know, again, it's like, we've let the genie out of the bottle here, and now they go, wow, this is great, why don't we do this all the time, so.
I should say too, and I apologize, I should have included these minutes, but they were only in draft form, so I wasn't sure what to do at the time. But the planning board, in their discussions, did recommend that the city commission consider a sunset for this one, just to kind of allow them to have it for a little bit, but also be able to revisit it at a certain date to see if it's actually working. And we've done that, in my experience, only with one other restaurant, and that was Dick O'Dow's, but that was in the alley. When their outdoor dining deck in the front was affected by the Maple Road construction, the city commission allowed them to put tables and chairs in the Willits Alley from, I think it was in 2020, April to November, just the outdoor dining season, just to see. But if they wanted to do it permanently, which they did, they'd need to reapply, and they have. So it would be a similar situation with the Maury, in that if the city commission so chooses, they could set a date range for this platform, see if it works, and then revisit it when that sunset ends. So that was an important thing that I didn't include in your packets that I wanted to at least make sure you know.
Okay. And just in consideration too, for the Maury, there's probably a total amount of spots on that block, on the east side from Hamilton to Ring Road. I mean, you're probably
you're asking
taking
me?
up, yeah.
I could probably count
So I'm just saying,
it.
percentage-wise, you're probably taking up at least 40% of the parking on that one side of the street with 5 spots.
Wow.
Yeah, so I mean, put it in, you know, so there's context to some of the rules.
13?
Okay, so you're taking 5 of the 13, what, that's exactly 40%, yeah.
Yeah.
And there was a point made earlier about this is kind of a big block in that there's really only maybe 4 storefronts here, including that big office building at the top. So there's not a lot of little businesses that get a lot of turnover, but you've got the jeweler here, the Maury, the salon, and then Work Co. I'm not sure if this is an updated, oh no, it is, I see the moped park.
Yeah, I see that, yeah. So I'm just saying, percentage-wise, hey, you know, if you're asking me, you're giving up 40% of your parking on that street.
Yeah.
And I would imagine during prime hours, you know, especially like lunchtime rush, a lot of the restaurants on Hamilton Road benefit from that parking and other businesses too.
Yeah. Really, the best statistic is go back prior to COVID, this summer of 19, when we were at overcapacity in the structures, you know, and it was outdoor dining and everyone was, you know, looking for parking spots, so.
Yeah.
But the world has changed,
Yes.
Richard.
But,
The world has changed.
The world has changed, but I don't think the change is permanent.
I don't know. I think people really like eating outside.
You know, some of the major office buildings that took a lot of parking, you know, they're gonna be working out of their home. You know, we had a lot of social digital companies that have shifted their philosophical approach to having an office. This is one of those conversations, should we even be having this before the planning board finalizes strategically what they're going to do?
Yeah. Have we had some updates on, I didn't see it in the packet, the usage for the last 2 months since we.
And I will just comment as well to our chairman's comment earlier, it's a lot of money. I know they've spent a lot of money already for this.
Yeah.
To date.
And we're very lucky that we, in a way, got to see it during that temporary COVID, just to see how
Yes.
it worked. And admittedly, we got to see what it was like when they were closed. So something to consider. It's kind of an odd benefit of what happened, is we got to see a free preview, if you will.
You know, there are some cities and some of the photos that you presented in the minutes that showed continuity of all of the outdoor dining establishments, and it looked great. I mean, it looked great. People seemed comfortable sitting next to a heater. You know, so again, at the higher level in the planning committee, is that the ultimate philosophical approach to it, or are we going to have all individual shapes and sizes and coverings and everything else that it's going to make it look not professional or ad hoc?
Sure, and you can see too that, you know, the distance that servers have to traverse to get from either this door or through these doors into this door to the patio is quite far.
It's far.
Maybe almost 30 feet. And that's walking across the sidewalk, the public sidewalk, to get to this platform. So it's something else we're considering. But
Well, as an operator, no one likes cold food. So by the time it gets there.
You do not have a platform, do you?
We had one during COVID.
During COVID,
Right. And, you know, in true disclosure, we have also have an application that's coming in too. So that's why even for us, you know, the public wants something like this, and I'm hearing it all the time, to eat outside. We get so many requests, can we eat outside? And with our existing deck, which conforms to all of the Birmingham standards, it's very small, it's only 20. We have the outside deck, I could fill it every day, every meal period. In the good weather and then the bad weather, again, what does it look like?
and another thing I wish I would have included in your packets, we did an Engage Birmingham survey. Maybe some of you saw it.
I saw that, yeah.
About the COVID expansions in the outdoor dining. In general, it was overwhelmingly positive.
Yeah, that's what I'm getting too.
And again, we saw a free preview of your deck when it was out. So once that comes, it'll be nice to have at least seen it. And I can include those, by the way, the results of that, which are still kind of updating in your next packet.
The other thing is, our people, I understand the previous research on the number of sales per space, but if there's a whole shift in the environment, if that is bringing more people because they want to come and eat outside, we don't really know, but that could be bringing more business, at least during the day.
Well, but that was part of my point. Most of these establishments aren't open for
Right.
for lunch. At dinner time, I can count on one hand how many stores are open past
Right.
5:30.
No, I hear you. So maybe a different focus would be, at least on the weekend, be open for lunch.
So here we are.
Yeah, I mean, I know, you know, the Engage survey, but it's like saying to the public, did you like free parking during the pandemic? I mean, I can't imagine anyone that would say no.
Yeah.
I mean, yeah, you know, I'm not fighting the idea. I mean, I love the idea of the platforms and, you know, but again, there's some control issues here and you know, again, you're looking at the Maury, 40% of the parking on that one side of the street, you know. And as you say, there was such an uproar about the EV stations, so it's,
Well, on the other, I mean, never mind, I'll set that aside.
So just to, I guess, bring it back to the topic, I mean, I think the discussion we're having right now seems to be going around the same path as the discussion we had on the previous topic, which is setting those standards and what the planning board's doing as far as what standards need to be in there and what you guys want to see is some of those standards and what comes back in front of the committee. This topic is more specifically about this dining deck here and what the recommendation is from the APC regarding this deck. So I think just to try to focus a little bit is a lot of the same things that I heard at the previous topic or what we're talking
Right.
about again now, so.
but it's already been approved from the planning board.
Well,
This deck, I
This-
don't believe so.
Oh, no?
so the planning board, in this case, in the case of special land use permits, can only offer recommendations, just as you can. So they've recommended approval to the city commission, both the special land use permit and the final site plan review. So this was the second stop to get your recommendation.
Okay.
Then we'll bring all three recommendations to the city commission, who has the final say for special land use permits. As opposed to like a Planterpy who didn't have a special land use permit. But that was the awkward situation where it was kind of already decided.
It was already decided. Okay.
This is very much not decided.
I recommend we only, allow or recommend 4 spaces, not 5.
Pardon me?
I recommend that we suggest, or whatever our terminology is, only
A
4
motion.
spaces be approved, not 5.
No, I agree. No, I think the left side, my recommendation would be the left side be cut back to at least add one more parking spot.
Yeah. It looks like maybe only 6 to 8 feet, which would remove that table, but there's a big dead space here anyways, so.
Right.
Well, they probably do need some place to maneuver, but still, that's for them to figure out.
And just,
Okay.
how many feet, how long is that, the whole? I'm just trying to get a relationship to Toast, the size.
46.
And that's about, would you say that's about the same size as Toast?
I can maybe just do a quick little. About 40 feet,
About 40.
which makes sense.
Okay.
Based on the width of the parking.
That's a pretty big platform when you see it, Toast.
Yeah.
Right, but in Toast, though, it's a more crowded area.
Nick, just out of curiosity, have you seen any of these dining decks and this angled parking, angle the deck so that you're not wasting a space or?
Oh.
I mean, really, if you angle that deck on the south side, of it,
Right.
you could recapture that table you would lose on the north side
No, I've never seen
because you
that.
have a
Oh, instead of a
basically
square,
wasted
yeah.
space there.
That's interesting.
It looks like to me, you would lose 3 tables.
No, I mean the south side, so that where it's, if you go to that corner,
You mean this? I think
No,
that's the
the-
north side.
no, the south side.
South side,
Go
right
to the
there.
south side.
Yeah,
If
just,
you were to angle that to match the line of the space that you're losing, because you got half the space is gone.
Which is about here, right? What did you say? So you lose those 3 tables.
no, he's saying take it off the end and put it to the, angle it, so he wouldn't
Add some.
This over here,
Oh,
angle it, yeah.
could recapture
I
space
see.
you're losing over there, because this is all wasted space that you
Right.
can't use for parking.
I see what you're saying. Thank you for pointing
As
that out.
opposed to a rectangle, it would be, what is that, a parallelogram
Right.
shape?
Yeah. Whatever that shape is, yes.
A lot of times it's geometry.
Attention and geometry.
Yeah, I mean, it's something, I mean, hope that'll probably hit the minutes and these minutes will be shared, so.
That's a good point.
There are options, I think.
Do we vote on any of this or we just?
Well, I think there's a motion.
Yeah, I move that they be allowed to have outdoor deck, but be restricted to no more than 4 spaces.
May I make a suggestion, if I may, Scott?
Please.
Typically, there's a recommendation, so maybe planning board language goes more along the lines of, I recommend that the city commission blank the deck for the Maury with whatever conditions you'd like to assign. just to make it clear in the minutes.
Okay,
Does that
That
sound
makes
fair,
sense.
Scott?
I think so. So, do we have a recommendation from Lisa?
So my motion is that we recommend to the commission that the Moore be allowed to have the outdoor deck, but with the caveat that it only have 4 spaces at max taken up.
Okay, we have a motion from Lisa.
I'll second.
Second from Richard. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed? Oh, do we have any public comment?
There are a couple public in here, so.
Let's find out from them before we,
Is anyone from the Maury on?
I don't think so.
You would think if a position like this, you'd want to.
yeah, know what's going
Do
on.
they know this is happening?
That might be something that's true. I don't know. I
I
can't
don't see
remember
any
if they-
hands raised, so.
No hands
if
raised?
they were told at that meeting that this is happening, but
Okay, so were there any opposed? No. So, our recommendation to the planning board and city commission, is as was presented by Lisa and seconded by Richard. How's that sound?
Because I don't think there's been any other establishment that's taken 4 spots, 4 parking spots for a deck. Not
No,
off
I mean,
my,
there's other decks that are similar in size, but it's on parallel parking.
but they're on
not
parallel
angled
parking, right? Okay.
yet.
Thank you very much.
Thanks, everyone.
No, thank you.
Thanks.
Yeah, I'll be
thanks.
back in probably October.
Okay.
Great.
Did you vote on that motion?
Yes,
You did?
was
We did.
unanimous.
Yeah, it passed. Okay. Any, items, for the public to comment on or for the committee to comment on that are not on the agenda? Any points anybody wants to bring up? Lisa does.
Well, I've been asked to suggest, and I think it's a good suggestion, is there a way to have more short-term parking spaces, particularly along Woodward and, where there's a concentration of businesses, and someone anticipated the objection that people wouldn't know which were which, but I think that could be easily addressed.
Where are you specifically looking at?
I think the main place that people are talking about is Maple between Woodward and Brown or Chester.
What are the limits on the meters right now?
They're hours, 1 hour,
Hour.
So where people could
run in.
run in to drop something off, pick something up, even take a quick look around.
Are you suggesting less than an hour then?
Yes. Like we have them in some places that
Half
are
hour.
like 15-minute drop-off spots, right?
There's no meters, Mike, correct me if I'm
Maybe
wrong,
that's
there's
not
no meters
Birmingham.
less than an hour time zone? right?
There's a couple 30-minute.
30 minutes?
Aren't there places that don't even have a meter, though?
No.
No, they,
Okay, I'm not thinking of Birmingham then, but, there's a lot of complaints about the moped places, and I always try to defend them and say they wouldn't have been big enough for a car, but I don't really know if that's true. Anyway, so, that was just something that I said I would put out there, and I think it's a good idea.
So a couple things just to respond to your comments is the moped thing is, you are correct. That's an area where the angled parking kind of dead end, there's not enough spot for another angled parking space. So in an attempt to utilize that space, we put in moped, and if a motorcycle parked there,
Right.
it would be fine too. So that was just to try to utilize the space that was left over. Regarding the time zone, that's a little bit more difficult. That would be something that we could look at a study, we could pull our meter revenues and our average time that people are staying at those spaces to see if people are staying longer than a half hour, if they're being used, or are most people only paying for 15, 20 minutes and leaving. We could look at that, but also I think if we did something like that, it would go back to public meetings and stuff like we talked about earlier in this meeting, because you'd have so many businesses that would be impacted by that change, to make sure that that is a change that all those businesses are in favor of doing before
Yeah.
we restricted that time frame. So we could look at something like that. It would definitely take some time and some work to do that.
Yeah, I think the first thing though is a little problematic, because I know personally I always put in more time than I actually use.
Right.
But I think
Sure.
that makes sense.
You're right, it's a good point. I mean, I get customers that are just picking something up in, less than 10 minutes, in and out, but
Well,
it's
if I
different.
want a gold ring, it still might only take me 20 minutes.
Right.
Come in, see what you got.
And that goes right back to my point about how valuable a meter is,
Right. Well, at one time, we really wanted to encourage structure use, so this would go further in that direction.
Okay.
The other thing, if I can move on,
Oh, please do.
has to do with what we were talking about last week, which was how little we actually charge for these platforms. And I'm wondering about making a recommendation that be more in line with what those spaces are worth. That's all.
Yeah.
And I'll confirm with Nick after the meeting, but I think that was part of what was discussed earlier, is that maybe to look at not just what the cost of the parking space is, but the revenue generated by that space, and then whether or not that should be included in the
Right.
cost of putting in those decks.
Right.
I can ask him to look at that as well.
As someone in the industry, on the restaurant side of the industry, it's very difficult to make a profit on food and beverage, and as an operator.
Yeah.
So when you think to our conversations about applying for the permits and the process involved and the costs associated with that, and then the yearly fees associated with the deck, it's difficult to make a profit.
Okay.
Just my humble opinion.
That was voiced by Bill Roberts the other day.
Also,
Yes. Which would be helpful if we had a restaurateur on the.
Yeah.
yes. Well, you have a semi one. How's that?
Right.
Does the public have any comments? Anybody raising their hands? Scott?
But I did have that one question about the usage in the decks right now. Do we have any new numbers?
In general, it's a little less than 50%.
Less than
Pure Street tends to be
Be still.
the busiest of the five. And we did, about 2-3 weeks ago, we saw a pretty marked decrease, and I think it's because of the Delta variant. We'd seen a lot of monthly parkers come back, nothing like pre-COVID. But about 2-3 weeks ago, we saw a shift. A lot of people, I think, resumed working at home.
And that's not just a typical August thing.
Say that again?
That's not just a typical August thing.
Well, that's a good point. People do go away a lot in August, but it was pretty marked.
Okay.
And it correlated with what we were reading in the news about the Delta variant. So
I would-
hopefully after Labor Day and kids get back to school, and
Spread
we'll
it
see
even
an
more.
increase during the day.
I would just comment that I would respectfully agree to disagree that it's related to the Delta variant. Again, as one of the business owners, we've had the busiest month in August that we could possibly have. I think it's related to summer vacations. I definitely would agree with you with that. And then, like this week, for example, leading up to Labor Day, a lot of people go away. Yeah.
But typically August is a pretty busy month for us as a merchant. And I would have to agree with your assessment. The first 3 weeks of August were pretty timid, pretty quiet.
July was just busier than August.
Right.
And July can be, historically, July can be quiet
That's
too,
right.
with vacations.
From my perspective, August is my busiest month.
August is, back to,
Yeah. Everybody wants their braces on or off before school starts.
Do we have any data on the revenue from the meters? Are they still,
We do not know. We
We
didn't
don't.
pull any numbers.
Any other public or any other comments from the committee?
but one topic that maybe we could take up next month is the valet situation, maybe getting a handle on how many we have and, who operates them. And I just think that's, you're talking about the decks and things, but, the valet is another situation.
It is.
And
Especially with the holiday season coming up and,
one of the things I typically notice on the valet stations is, they'll sometimes set up earlier during the day, and they'll put some of their cars in the bag zone, it's like, so again, I'd like to have a little bit more control over that. And how are we on the appointment of a permanent parking person?
Oh, yeah, that's right.
So we're down to two.
Oh.
Two finalists. They both submitted some writing samples, basically what their thoughts were on the Birmingham system and what would their first kind of agenda items on what they want to see done. So I haven't had a chance to really look at that yet, but that's out there. So it's down to two. Once that's reviewed, I'm assuming the city manager will be having an interview with the final two and making a selection.
So that would have a big impact on us.
Yeah, yeah.
So would that person attend the advisory parking committee meetings?
That person will be, yes, that
Overseeing?
I will take the folder and
Yeah.
pass the torch, so to speak.
Darn.
I sense some glee with that, Commander Gray.
Not at all. I enjoy my time with you guys. So,
We're gonna miss
that's on
you.
top of my other
He's applying for the city manager next. But I would like to say that we really appreciate you stepping into the situation.
Absolutely.
Oh,
It's
yeah,
been-
I mean,
It's
you
been a
were-
help.
You were thrown into the fire,
So I just have a couple things for you under our miscellaneous communications. There was a request, and I don't remember who it was, but about attaching an attendance report. So I did put that in there. I believe it was the last 3 years' worth of attendance reports. So you can review that and see that. Additionally, I wanted to make you aware, the bid openings for the Northhold Woodward structure
Oh, yes.
were back, I think a week or two ago. We had a meeting yesterday with the low bid vendor, which was Smith's Waterproofing yesterday, to go over some of the specifications that were required in the bid documents to make sure everything was in line. I am hoping that WJE gives me a recommendation or a review by the end of this week, so I can start preparing that report to go to the city commission for approval. The next commission meeting is September 13th, so Smith's Waterproofing, assuming they're selected by the city commission, is ready to start work on the 15th of September. So that's the goal for that. Today, actually, right after this meeting at 9:30, we have the pre-bid meeting for the work proposed at the other three structures, the Park, Peabody, and Chester work. That was the RFP that you saw previously. The pre-bid meeting again is today. The bids are due next Friday by 2 o'clock. So by the end of the day next Friday, we should have those, and then the following week be able to move on processing those as well.
So the first one would be September 15th at which deck?
Northhold Woodward,
Oh, Northhold Woodward. And Smith, have they done work before for us?
they have not done work
They
in the
haven't.
city before. That's the only updates I have for you.
Anything else from anybody?
Good meeting.
We're good?
Yeah.
All right. Meeting adjourned.
All right.
Everybody have a good month.